Toni. One sec. Yes. Hi, everyone. Welcome back for a special edition of It Doesn't Happen Overnight. It is 420, y'all, and I'm celebrating with two amazing people, Wes and Pale. But first, I'm your host, Toni, and we're so excited to virtually be spending this holiday with you. Whether you are watching on YouTube or listening on your preferred podcast app, we are stoked to be here today to celebrate this holiday with y'all. So let me introduce Wes and Pale, who are joining us virtually at SLO.
Hey, I'm Wes Berger. We're both in San Luis Obispo, California.
I go by Pale, also in San Luis Obispo, California.
And guys, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourselves and your background?
All right, I'll go first. So a little bit about myself, at least as it relates to the topic at hand. Been selling weed since high school. I mean, consuming weed since I think 6th grade was the first time I took when I took my first toke.
Who gave that to you? Like a sibling or like a
some bad influences in the neighborhood? Yeah. And
you gotta love those bad influences, though. They always show you the way.
I mean, it seems to be working out for me, so I'm not going to complain about it. But yeah, and then jumped ship on my corporate job about almost 2 years ago now to go rogue and go out on a limb to take this opportunity in the newly legalized cannabis market. And that's what we'll be talking a whole bunch about tonight.
What were you doing before?
I was working for Tesla in the solar sales division, Slinging solar. Like a motherfucker.
And you were like, nah, I'm gonna sell kush. Why don't you use those sales skills for something great? Tesla's great, but not like weed great.
Yeah, I mean, I could sling the fuck out of some solar, but slinging weed's a whole different avenue, especially in the legal licensed market where your homies can't just take whatever you give them, you know?
Literally, like Wes.
Well, I'm Wes. I'm Wes Berger.
Hey, Wes and I went to high school together. That's just a little precursor.
We went to middle school together.
Oh yeah, I guess
we've done a lot. We have our history.
I used to hang out with you before even we went to school together at the Johanneson's house because I was on Kendall's soccer team and you were friends with Connor.
There you go. I was friends with
Classic.
Kendall. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, but I was like better friend. It was like a girl guy thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was elementary school.
I actually met Pale working at MindBody. We were salesmen at MindBody selling wellness software.
Scheduling software for health and wellness professionals, actually.
Wes, do you know what your job was?
I'll say that the 60-second pitch was tough for me because you know me, I like to have real, genuine conversations and to go into it and be like, these next 60 seconds, like, I'm gonna work you. Like, I have a tough time with that.
Weed is kind of a wellness software in some ways.
Yeah, but I can.
But you can be more chill about it and really ease your customer into the product.
Yeah, absolutely. So I obviously grew up in Chicago with Toni in a town called Hinsdale, and weed growing up was not chill at all and was super illegal and was like, if you were gonna pick up weed, it was super sketch in a parking lot.
Super sketch, like 3 towns over.
And like, I don't even think I ever even expected like a nug, like a nug. Like I expected just like trim, like shake. Like just
I would get 1 gram. It'd be $20 for 1 gram.
Yeah, $20 grams. And also it was just not culturally okay. Like if you smoked like every weekend or something, like you were a stoner. Like a stoner. Where now if you smoke every weekend, you're pretty good about it.
It seems like wuss if you smoke every weekend.
Yeah, I was like, if you're only smoking the weekend.
No, all the time. But yeah, obviously moving out here introduced me to a whole new spectrum of and culture of way to look at it and the benefits of it and being able to actually know what you're smoking and know what you're ingesting and know what you're taking and like know going into it what the benefits are or what the intention is with what you're taking.
Yeah.
Really changes the game.
I'm sure we'll get more into it as we go on, but I think that was the biggest difference for me too. Like before, it was literally, I don't even know your name. I got your number from this guy, got that from this guy, and I'm meeting you 3 towns over. And like when I got to California, I'm like, I can select what's a strain. I'm like, there's
It was
different
like
types of
free
weed.
too. It was like free. Like if the black market game right before it got legalized, like it allowed it. Like I had a guy in the dorms next to me that he never let me pay for weed when I smoked.
I remember that. I remember that.
And I would like hide $5 bills in his pillowcase because I was so thankful and was like, whatever. But it's a totally different game. I remember FaceTiming you freshman year of college and being like, yo, like, are you smoking every day? Because like
like,
people
yeah.
back home don't like, they don't really get it. They don't.
I was like, they are delivering weed to my door right
They
now.
thought
Like
we were
this
like
is
drug addicts.
amazing.
Yeah, they
Wait,
thought we
so
were like drug addicts.
before we get too much into it, let's talk about what you guys are doing now.
I'll let Pale really introduce this. Pale worked at the business we work at first and was kind of a primary sole employee that really got this business up and running. And I've joined the team in the last, I guess, 7 months ago. It's a smaller business, but I'm definitely just learning a lot from Pale, doing a lot of the brunt work, but also still finishing up some classes in school. But Pale's definitely the machine.
All right, Pale, take it away.
Yeah, so what we do now, we work for a cannabis distribution company primarily. We have a couple other licenses as well, but the main license types you need to know about are cultivation, distribution, manufacturing, and retail. Cultivation's pretty obvious. They grow it. Distribution handles basically everything in between, from taking it from the cultivator to either a manufacturer or bringing it to our facility where we break it down from the bulk flower down into whatever people want to order, eighths, ounces, half ounces, etc. And then we deliver that to retail. So when I first started working for the company we work for is called Coastal Business Distribution. When I first started working for this company, it was back in 2018 when what was called collectives were still legal, which was basically the Wild West of kind of do whatever you want. And it was just legal enough. So how it used to be back when I first started was I would go to get a pound from wherever I could and go drive to various other retailers, other brokers, and I would pick up a pound, drive it down the street, mark it up $100, boom, done deal. And it was that easy. And
So
that was actually legal.
Okay, that was legal. I was going to ask, was this like the black market world, or this is still the legal world?
Yeah, so this was what operated under Prop 215, what was called the collective model. How the collective model worked was when everybody had a med card, if you had a med card, you could possess up to, I can't even remember exactly what it was, let's just say an ounce. So if you can possess an ounce with your med card, and then Wes can possess an ounce with his med card, well, if the two of us come together and put our med cards together, we can now possess 2 ounces. And so when you used to order weed back in 2018 from the collective that, you had to submit your med card and everything, they would keep that on file. And basically what made it legal for you to hold pounds and pounds and pounds was how many recommendations, how many doctors' recs you actually had in your fucking binder. So that's why I call it the Wild West, because it was like gray area as gray area gets. And so Prop 215 expired January 9th of 2019. So that's what started the transition from, you'd see 50 different collectives on weed maps and you could order from any of them. And technically they were legal until January 9th when Prop 215 expired, which made everything have to transition over to Prop 64, which is now what cannabis operates under, which is the fully regulated market. And one of the most critical changes is, number one, the taxes, and number two, just how the product can actually move. So the state of California does it a little bit differently than some other states, which I think Oregon and maybe Colorado do it similarly, where a distribution company is necessitated in the process because a cultivator cannot actually even move any of their own product off their
So you have
property.
to go pick it up from them.
Yep. Unless the cultivators also have a distribution license, they cannot take any of their product legally off of their property.
But at this point, Prop 65 made it really regulated by license, so there was no step of it that you could just do without the proper license to do so.
Correct. Yeah. And so every single step of the way that the product flows down through the supply chain, it's all in the track and trace system, which is called metric. It's an acronym of some sorts. It's METRC. Honestly, don't even know what it stands for, but
That's
yeah, so that's the track and trace system. So when I go to any of the various farms that we work with and I pick up, let's say 10 pounds, well, so I've got a whole litany of paperwork that accompanies that 10 pounds, and they're actually transferring it in the system so that it shows that it went from this 10 pounds is being transferred from cultivation license A to our distribution license. And as soon as it's transferred to our distribution license and we accept it on our side in our system, that now kicks in the first round of taxes, which is cultivation tax. Now, why
oh my
California?
gosh. First round of taxes. This is why it's so expensive now.
Exactly. And why California necessitates a distributor, whereas in other states, theoretically, a cultivator could actually sell directly to a retailer.
Mm,
In California, everything has to go through a distributor. And why that's the case is because the state wants just one
extra
entity to
tax.
go to. Well, they only want to have to fuck with one entity to collect their taxes, check all the regulations, check the packaging. So retailers can only receive product what's called retail ready, meaning it has all the compliant packaging. Taxes are paid. Like when a retailer receives product, it has to just be ready to put it on the shelf. Whereas back in the 215 days I was talking about before, I would drive over to fuckboy over here who runs a delivery service, and I'll sell him a pound. You could get your eighth weighed out in front of you by the delivery guy.
Mhm.
That is a thing of the past. We
Because
have to
you
not
guys
only.
are responsible for all of the any form that it's going to be in, any quantity, any
Yep.
wax, flour, whatever, has to be done at distribution.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So not only do we have to track all of it breaking down, so we have to actually in our internal in metric on our side, we have to take, okay, so here's the 10 pounds that just came in. Now we have to transition that within our system to there's 128 eighths in a pound. So you could get 1,280, theoretically, 1,280 eighths out of this 10 pounds. We have to put in the system that this 10 pounds is now being broken down into however many eighths we're packaging that day
Holy shit.
with all the compliant packaging. And there's a whole checklist you got to run through to make sure all of your packaging is compliant. It needs to everything be, oh my God. Okay. We'll get into testing next. Because that's the next thing that's making your cannabis so goddamn expensive these days. But it comes in, we got to track breaking it down, and we got to put every single thing that is required on the BCC, which is the Bureau of Cannabis Control. That's the state entity that oversees all cannabis in the state of California, the Bureau of Cannabis Control. So it has to comply with all their packaging requirements, being who's the distributor, who's packaging the product, when the date it was packaged, the test results, including potency, total cannabinoids, THC content, CBD content. And so one of the most difficult. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. So I'm guessing because you said we're going to go into testing, and you figure that out by testing it.
Yeah. So
Okay.
one of the most difficult things back in the day, let's say I ran a delivery service back in the 215 days, I could receive 1 pound, break that up into 128 eighths. Good to go. That's totally enough. Whereas now, we need to receive things, and usually I try to keep it at a minimum of 10 pounds because the test that we have to run costs $800. Well, it's $700 plus a $100 field sampling fee, which is the fee that they charge to come to us to pull the sample, even though they have to do it. So we have to do an $800 test. So back in the day, when let's say I bought a pound for $1,000, I would sell it down the street to a guy for $1,100. Boom, that's it. His cost is $1,100. Now, if
Yeah.
we're buying a pound for $1,000 and we do an $800 test on it, well, that $1,000 pound just turned into an $1,800 pound.
Oh
So
my God.
yeah. So your eighth just went from, let's say $20 once it's down to the retail level to 50, So testing is very prohibitive price wise. And that's one of the things that makes it really difficult for a smaller company like us to compete with these big companies, because you can do one test for up to 50 pounds, but we can't fucking afford 50 pounds. I can't buy
Yeah.
50 pounds at a time. I don't have money for that.
So
So
you have to go economy to scale, but you can only go to your to the extent of your business, to the amount that you can afford to put out before you make that profit back.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So, and that's why I got to keep it I would like to be buying 2 to 5 pounds per strain, but if I got to buy at least 10, because that only makes it so the pound is now costing me 80 additional dollars. So I'll run you through a quick breakdown of how I do my costs. Let's say I'm actually paying the farmer $1,000 for a pound. Well, okay, then we have cultivation tax on top of that, which was the first tax I mentioned earlier. Cultivation tax is $154.40. So now that pound is costing $1,154.40. And then let's say I have 10 pounds that I'm going to do an $800 test on. So that just went up from 1154 to 1,230, right around there. So now this pound is costing $1,230. So now when I break that down into eighths, it's costing way more than it was originally. And then from there, that's my cost. And then we got to put a markup on that because we got to fucking make some money on this too. So then we got to put a markup on that. And then that is what I'm actually going to quote prices at for the retailer. And then let's say I have an eighth going to a retailer at $15 wholesale. Well, then there's also a 27% excise tax that gets added onto that.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So if I tell the retailer, hey, this eighth is $15, we'll add 27% onto that. So, we're getting to like $17 for this eighth. And then most retailers, they take the cost plus excise. So let's say we're at $17 after excise, and then usually they'll double that. So let's say now it's on the retail menu for $35, and then there's also sales tax.
Okay, so I remember when weed was legalized, I was so excited. I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. Because like I used to have to get it through my ex-boyfriend because he had a med card, but now I was like, I'm chilling. I go on Ease, which is a delivery service. I go to check out and I go, what the fuck? Because like from when I went home over winter break, when I went home to Chicago, it was December. I come back in January, weed's legalized. It's at least double what I remember paying. And I was like, yo, I didn't realize all this legal shit was going to change the price because I was getting it fine before. Like, I became way less.
That's why you go back to your ex-boyfriend.
Exactly.
He told me the eighth was $20. I went over there, gave him $20, and I was fucking done. It's not like, and that's the thing that a lot of retailers are dealing with, like, because they can put on their menu. So let's say I have an eighth at $15. Okay, then normally retailers just double it. So then they're going to be selling that eighth at $30. Well, then they need to put on excise and sales tax, and that's why you saw a price of $30 on the menu, but then you were out the door at like 45. So that's another thing that retailers are dealing with.
Driver, because you are like, thanks for giving me weed.
Mind you, everything on the back end that we're dealing with, from the cultivation all the way to the retailer, is in cash.
Oh, yeah.
Everything's in cash.
That's another fun part of this, is that
why?
We can't get a bank because banks are FDIC insured, which is the Federal Deposit Insurance Company. So if a bank was to hold any of our money as a cannabis business, well, federally, cannabis is still illegal. So banks can get their own insurance put in jeopardy by supplying their services to a cannabis business, theoretically. So, yeah, we deal in all cash.
That's wild.
Yeah, a lot of businesses have been able to set up accounts with credit unions, and we personally haven't, because the people that own our company, they're pretty well known locally, and we've tried to open up bank accounts, and if you just Google our owners' names, it just comes up cannabis, cannabis, cannabis. So we've gotten bank accounts shut down left and right, and we've just given up on it. And so, like, going from doing the operations that we do and the sales that go to retail, it's not huge amounts. Like we'll have maybe like $1,200 orders up to maybe $10,000 orders. So it can get fairly substantial, but when we're talking wholesale, like a lot of the transactions that we do where we do transport. So like tomorrow, for example, I'm taking 65 pounds down to a distributor, and I'll be coming back from that transaction with about, I haven't looked at the invoice yet, but it's like $87,000 that I'll just be picking up in cash and then driving back with me to pay the cultivator for what I just delivered.
Wild to me.
Yeah. We have insurance for all of it, and everything that we do is under cameras. Like we literally have cameras in our vans and shit. So it's all super well monitored, but could be completely avoided if we were able to just use.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying, like, that's just like, it almost feels like mob shit. Like to have any amount of that $87,000 like in cash in your person, I'm like, this is like some mob shit. But in reality, you're just following the law, which is just because it's not federal, it has this impediment. So I'm kind of curious, and I feel like the people will be too. Like, what does an average, maybe I'll say week, or if it makes it more easy to say month or day, whatever timeline you want to do, what does it look like for you guys? Like, I want to know like what it's like on the ground.
Okay, so talking about our retail sales, I do all of the sourcing of product. So I go and find the flower that we're going to bring in. From being in the industry now for a couple of years, I've built up relationships with a lot of farms, straight up like mega farms. Like you walk into these greenhouses and it's bigger than a Costco, all just full of cannabis. So I'll source the flower, and I've got a pretty good eye now, and I know prices really well. So I can go to a farm, take a look at what they have to offer. They'll tell me a price, and I can determine if that's something that makes sense. So let's say I need to be sourcing, and then I'll go find some flower at a farm, go purchase that, and then I'll bring it in. And then the first thing that we have to do is test it. So usually I'll schedule the testing facility to come to us, hopefully same day that I'm bringing the flower in, because that's another bottleneck in this whole thing, is that the testing takes 5 business days. So
Wait, have you guys seen that South Park where Towley's like, this is good shit? Maybe no, yeah, I don't remember, but he's like going to yes, Tegrity Farms. He goes and he's like, this is good shit, and that's how he tests it, and that's the image I have in my mind right now as you guys are talking about testing. I know it's not how it goes, but
we have R&D, I would say. So there's only 4 of us typically in the warehouse, and when we bring in a new product, we're not always like actually testing it to like.
We'll usually send Wes on some what we call personal R&D, where we'll just.
So we just got a pre-roll line up and running, and for example, we'll be testing a batch, and before we pay the money to actually get tested for like percentages and all of that and what the high is, sometimes we'll take a lunch break and we'll test it out.
Do some personal R&D.
I mean, campus. You guys know weed, like
off campus. Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. And we have those discussions. Like when he brings in a new product, we're having the discussions as a whole about pricing and what the pros and cons are. We talk about that when he brings.
Well, yeah, because it's like, yeah, there's gonna be the test that's official and gives you all these numbers and stuff, but also like y'all smoke weed, so you kind of just want to know how the weed is. Like it's like people when they buy it, a lot of people are not gonna have the amount of knowledge that you do. I've been smoking for how old am I? 22, 6+ years, 7 years, and I still know so little. So it's like even a pretty frequent smoker that doesn't always have all this knowledge. You just want to know like it's good weed.
Well, like, and you are the average smoker. Most average smokers don't know a lot. And there's a lot that's changing in the branding and what's actually selling and what makes weed more expensive, or what makes weed more cheap, or what makes it more of a value product. So we've been in the agreement and kind of under the understanding where we joke about it, but we don't even really believe in sativa or hybrid anymore, or sativa or indica anymore, because things have been crossed so many times.
I've read something about this.
And it also depends a whole lot on each individual. Like it can be down to a genetic degree where like how your receptors are actually going to take in the product you're consuming. Like Wes could experience it in the same exact flower in a totally different way that I could, but
it would almost be weird if he didn't, because we all are different. Like, you know what I mean?
So like going back to an average week, like next week, for example, we got so blown out this week with 420 orders that we're almost out of product. So to start off,
and Corona.
Right, yeah, and the virus has people buying up cannabis like there's no fucking tomorrow. So, which maybe there's not, but so like next week, for example, I'll be going up to a farm in Salinas on Monday. Basically, I already picked out the flower. They have a couple strains that I'll be looking at in person to decide between, but I'll be going to pick up the flower on Monday. I'll go early in the morning so that I can schedule the testing facility to be there right when I get back, so we can have the testing kicked in on Monday. And so what I'll do on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, while I'm waiting for that test to come back, I'll send out to our retail partners what we have. And then I'll just tell them like, hey, this is what I expect the potency to be, because that's a whole other factor of this now. Like back in the day, it was the look and the smell of the flower determined price. Now you can have some bitchin' indoor, like the sickest fucking looking flower you've ever seen, and it might test low. And if it tests low, that just dropped your product from absolute top shelf to competing with mid-grade. You know, so I can basically start pricing and start generating orders while we're waiting for that test to come in. I just have to cross my fingers and hope that the potency is going to be in line with the pricing that I set and already
Yeah, so that
generated sales with.
when you're forecasting, you're in some sort of range where it would be unfortunate if you're like, oh, I think we're going to make this much money, and then it came back at a lower potency, and then you're like, oh, never mind.
Right. So let's say the test comes back Wednesday. We can't sell anything or even package it flower wise. We can't even package it until we get that test result back, because those test results need to be on the labels that we're going to be putting on the packages that we're putting the flower into. So it's just sitting there until we get that test back. So let's say the test comes back Wednesday. So if the test comes back Wednesday, then we've already got orders ready for it. So then that's when Wes is fucking, all right, Wes, get the fuck on it. That's when that kicks in. And
all right, what does that entail? Take me through that for a second.
I'm in the warehouse where we have like an operational manager, Brandon, and we have a metric specialist, Christian, who's one of my roommates. I go to school and I'm a little bit part-time, working anywhere from 25 to 40 hours a week. But when I come in, he's getting most of the orders ready and going through all of the testing processes and obviously what he just talked about. But while it's sitting in the warehouse, we're usually discussing what packaging is going to look like, what's the best form of packaging that's going to basically give us the best price and be able to create the best margins for the business. So there's certain strains that I guess we would get in smalls or bigs or whatever, and some of it we're trimming up and putting a lot of labor into. And there's some weed that, yeah, does take a lot of labor, but isn't as quality. So we sell them at high rates, like an ounce or a half ounce.
Got it.
High volumes at an ounce or a half ounce, we can charge cheaper. So I'm in the warehouse basically taking the orders, what the quantity is of the packages that we're going to be printing, considering all of the packaging options that we have. Then we print out labels. And not only do we need labels, we need compliance stickers. So there's a compliance sticker that tells you like all the Surgeon General warnings and has like the specific California whatever stamp on it. We have to put that on every single piece.
So like basically when I mean like, all right, Wes, get to work, it's like when we receive an order from one of our retailers, like I'll send them out prices and I'll say, okay, this is $60 an ounce wholesale. So that's usually going to be out to the consumer at like $140, $150 ounce. If we have a product that I think is going to work well in ounces. So like I do the sourcing of the product and then set the prices that they're going to go out at retail and then do all the sales. So I'll send that out to all our retail partners and then I'll get orders back. And as soon as we get orders back, then like, all right, Wes, the higher collection just put in an order for 30 ounces of the purple punch. That was a good one. Yeah. The purple punch was so fire. But, I'll be like, all right, Wes, higher collection wants 30 ounces of purple punch. They want 15 ounces of juicy fruit and a half pound and eighths of the white widow. I'll get that from whatever retailers we have. You know, they want this quantity of that strain. They want it in bags or they want it in jars. And then that's what gets laid out. And then honestly, we all get to work on it. Like today, all three of us were in the warehouse putting stickers on bags, weighing out bags, and then heat sealing the bags.
You just do whatever needs to get done. Like however many people need to be on it to get it done in time. If you have a lot of orders for 420, like you all just gotta, there's jobs and there's definitions, but at the same time, like everyone's, especially in a small company, everyone pulls weight no matter wherever it's needed.
Yeah. Totally. And the packaging is ridiculous with the amount of like checklist items you have to have on the packages and like child safe or child proof or whatever seals on
those
different
child proofs are hard for me. A lot of them stump me like way more than I want.
Yeah, but there's like 10 different checklist items and multiple different packages that you have to put things into, and
you guys are making different forms, right? Like you'll make wax, you'll make other like pre-rolls, etc.
So the trim business is a whole other side of the business as well, which has been through honestly like a roller coaster throughout the last year, just because of different public views of vape cartridges or wax or what certain laws are, but Pale can kind of go in on what that looks like. So right now we're not doing a ton of that, but we're doing a lot more.
Yeah, so like kind of actually what we built the business with primarily is like how I mentioned one of the license types earlier is manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
Manufacturers can take cannabis in its various forms and turn it into those other forms that people consume it in, such as edibles, cartridges, which you can fill a cartridge with anything from distillate to sauce to diamonds. You can put a lot of shit in a cartridge. You can vape anything. Manufacturers are the ones who turn, usually it's trim, into those various products. Yeah, that's kind of what we actually built the business on, was doing wholesale trim transactions. And that gets really complicated because one of the most difficult things, a lot of the time when it comes to the testing, we don't usually run into issues with flower because you got to put a lot of pesticides on your flower for it to fail, basically. But the problem with trim is even if you have minute amounts of pesticides on there, well, you can test the trim all you want, but when it matters is when you need to test it once it's in its extracted form. So let's say you're making distillate, which is what goes in what most people know as cartridges. Well, so if I facilitate a transaction of, let's say, 1,000 pounds of biomass, that's going to, there you go, distillate cart right there.
Wes. For those watching on YouTube, Wes just showed a cartridge.
Yeah. So let's say I'm facilitating a transaction of 1,000 pounds of biomass between this cultivator and this manufacturer. Well, I've had transactions go way south before I really knew what I was doing because I would go out there and test the trim. Boom, it's clean on all the pesticides. We're good to go. So the manufacturer pays whatever the cost is. Let's say if it's 1,000 pounds at $100, let's say it's $100,000 for this 1,000-pound lot. And then they extract it and then they test their distillate and the distillate fails. Now we got a whole shitstorm on our hands.
They went from something that could have been what they could sell to now they can't sell.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's basically because I didn't do my due diligence, which I wasn't aware of this when I was kind of learning how to do all this. But now what I do is, let's say we have that 1,000-pound batch, I will have to go into every single bag and pull out. I usually pull 4 pinches. I do top, bottom, side.
We get very specific with our sampling pinches.
Yeah, we do.
Well, and anyone who's taken any stats intro course knows you have to do a good sample if you're going to want to get good results. You guys are smart. It's smart.
Exactly.
We're not cheating it. Pale is spot on, and he can do it without even getting the test results. I will give it to him, pretty amazing by just looking at like the density of the trim and knowing what percentage is going to come.
Okay, so it's so
garbage bags.
We're picturing right now when I talk about this lot, it's a fucking ocean of garbage bags.
Imagine
full of trim.
An entire garage filled with garbage bags that you have to put your hand elbow deep.
Oh, dude, some of these bags are so full, I got to go shoulder deep to get that bottom pinch.
How tall are you, Pale? For those watching on YouTube, you can't tell.
Oh, I'm 6'2".
Okay, so he's like body in.
These are long arms. These are long arms.
The heavy duty. The heavy duty trash.
Like, I'm high right now and I have this really good strain, so I'm extra excited. But also at the same time, like, talking to people like our age who are this knowledgeable about the weed industry is so cool and is exactly why I wanted to start a project like this. Because it's like, yeah, like, if you really do work at this is something you can become like an expert. Like, you at this point, Pale, are an expert at this.
Well, that's what's great about the whole legal, regulated, licensed market now, as opposed to the 215 days pre-January 9th, 2019. Yeah, it was way easier those days, but the problem is any fucking idiot could do it. Some of the people that I would deal with, oh my God, you would not believe how dumb of people could make money in the 215 days. Now, you need to be a legitimate business person. Now, what we do, it's it's cool and it's fun, but it is not easy. And you got
it does not sound easy. It's like there's a process and there's a thing that you're going to do every week, but it's all new product every time. So it's like you don't do the same thing every week. Every single time you get a batch, your job is different. Like the process is the same, but the job is different.
Absolutely. The job is different most days and like continues to change on like a big picture scale. And that is the really, really cool thing that we get to observe and watch, and why I find it so valuable is we are watching a brand new industry come to light. It's been there for decades in California, and it's been amazing, not necessarily amazing, but super interesting to watch an entire economy that's been working black market for so many decades now have to abide by so many things and have everything shift, where these farmers who have been working and doing their thing for 20 years on their farm, cultivating, expecting an income, paying certain workers, whatever, they're making like 20% of what they used to make because of taxes and because of everything that is now being put in place.
No.
and the new overhead and all of the insane systems that are put in place to make sure that you track and trace every single thing. They're trying to track it from basically seed all the way to the counter. That costs a lot to do a lot of those things, and a lot of the testing, and an entire farmer's batch could go bad, and there's no subsidizing of any kind. So they're not a typical farmer.
To make the analogy, what's it called? Improper foods, or like ugly foods or whatever, where it's like if the produce is a little bad, you can buy it at a cheaper price, but there's no like, oh, if this weed is a little bad, you can still sell it. It's like, no, it's like it has to pass.
That's what kind of bad.
Yeah, because if it's bad looking like how produce is, you can turn it into wax, you can turn it into edibles, you can turn it into pre-rolls, like you can do a lot of things with it. It's different from the food industry and the produce industry where there is no pesticides allowed. You can't have any heavy metals. It's super strict on what's allowed in marijuana and in your cannabis. Because of that, it becomes very, very difficult to count on everything being consistent.
And if I may here, I'm really hoping to just get across why your cannabis is so much more expensive in the legal market. And it's not just the taxes. So think about this, like a couple years ago, you could start growing weed in your backyard. You could, let's say you're able to start putting out like, I don't know, 20 pounds every like 6 months. Great. Like you finish that 20 pounds, you dry it up, you sell it to somebody like me, and then I go sell it to the next guy for $100 markup. My overhead in that circumstance is my car to pick it up from that guy and drive it to the next guy. The cultivator's overhead is the pots that he bought to put that in, and the retailer's overhead is just paying his drivers to go drive it around, or like paying his rent for the storefront, which was very chill back then. Now how it works is those growers who are trying to get their cultivation license, to get that license, you not only have to get approved by the state, but you got to get approved by the county. And the county is the county or the city, depending what jurisdiction you're in. But they're going to tell you, all right, so I see you've got your plants here. We're going to need you to put in razor wire fence around not just your cannabis operation, around your entire property, which could be up to like 40 acres. I've literally seen circumstances where the county comes in and says, you're going to need to fence off your entire 40-acre property. So, okay, so now you got to pay for that. And then what do they want to go on those fences? Cameras on the entire perimeter of the fence line. So now you got to put in a tens of thousands of dollar camera system on the whole thing.
What? This is crazy.
And then you used to just cut your plant down and hang it up in your garage with some fans. But now you need to have a building that is specifically designated for processing on a cultivation site. So you need to build a whole nother building that's for you to dry it, trim it, do all that. So
this is like making me mad, because I feel like it made it from an industry in which anyone, regardless of socioeconomic status, whatever, could like be a part of it. But at this point, you have to be able to invest a lot of money up front and be just wealthy, because there's so many restrictions where it basically probably just hurt people of color, like marginalized people of color, if we're going to be honest, because most of the big weed farms that I know now are run by like wealthy white men.
Yeah. And like, that's part of the rub of it too. And what's kind of difficult is that it honestly, while you're getting a lot of people that are squeezed out in this way or that way, it's good to know that the product is reliable. And, you know, back when you could just grow the plants in your backyard, you could spray whatever you wanted on it. Like now people are getting granted, it's way over the top in terms of how clean the cannabis needs to be. You know, your cannabis that you smoke needs to be far cleaner than even an organic certification for any.
Okay, well, I was saying, when you were saying no pesticides, no et cetera, I'm like, wait, so why do they allow that on food so readily? Because they're fine with that. I'm like, that's also going into my body way more regularly.
The state was like, okay, you guys want to smoke weed? You want weed to be legal?
We're gonna make it really fucking hard. Fuck you.
Yeah,
All right,
exactly.
those people are obviously not chillers, because they're like, that's just fucked up logic at that point.
And so that's just the cultivation side. And then where my overhead used to be just driving my car from this spot to that spot, well, now our overhead is the incredibly legit facility warehouse that we do everything in, also blanketed in cameras, also fenced off in every which way. We have keypad entry into every door. Like the owners of our company had to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to
Yeah,
get
it's a lot of money. It's
exactly.
a big. It's
And
not
so like
savings money.
it's like okay, yeah, it's good that you're getting a very clean, reliable product, but just as you mentioned there, that's kind of the issue with the whole new cannabis industry, is that the only people that are able to succeed are the ones that can come in with millions of dollars to start up these operations. So
Yeah, that's damn.
But we've
I'm not
seen
I'm not
people.
surprised is like the bad part about this. I'm not surprised because it was done through Washington, like through politics. I'm like corrupt. But still it's not corrupt because like you said, like it's the quality, which like I'm glad that I know what's in my weed.
Yeah, I'll touch on both of those things. Like we've also seen people dump a lot of money into facilities and especially like manufacturers, and expect things to basically work come to them and business come to them. But it's such a fighting market right now because everyone's trying to cut prices and everyone's trying to steal market shares, and there's not a lot of barriers to entry in certain counties and there's a lot of barriers to entry in other counties. So you're seeing different markets where it's super cutthroat, and then you're seeing other markets where it's pretty stable local market, but even in those markets bigger business can come in and totally change the game. So you see like a very community oriented business throughout a lot of the different retailers and distribution centers within the Central Coast of California, which is very cool.
I want to know for you guys like what the highlight of this experience has been, because it is unique. Like I feel like this would be so interesting to so many people because I just knew none of this before this past 40 minutes. But like what for you has just been like, all right, like this is great.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, you can relate, Toni, and it's hard to relate to a lot of people out here, but the culture shift was obviously pretty drastic. It's been interesting because my parents were never chill with it. You know, I got a lot of people back home weren't chill with it, but the dynamics and the societal kind of outlook on marijuana and cannabis in general in a lot of forms has changed throughout the entire country, even back home in Hinsdale and in Chicago. Like, I
It's
know.
legal in Chicago now.
No, it's legal now, which was honestly such a surprise. But even like right when that happened, I heard about a lot of parents were whatever. Like it just got more comfortable, and before it was super scrutinized, and it was super interesting to move here and to see the way that it was treated, and to see how it wasn't like this commodity that you had to be super stingy about with your friends or whatever. It was like
I couldn't
I
share weed in high school. That was all your weed. It was like a lot of money.
Yeah, and I hold it as a rule here because of that understanding that like if you're at my house and you want to smoke and it's late night or whatever, like it's not a big deal. You can always smoke for free because
It became so chill.
because I expect that at your house.
Because everyone can get it, and it's not this like hard thing where it's like, yeah, if you smoke and we're gonna be in this community, like the kind of expectation is like we're all providing, we're all supplying. It's just a free flowing
Yeah.
relationship.
And so I had a friend, a mutual friend. I actually introduced him to Pale, but he just little things where I needed a job or needed work or whatever, he would have me like package something up for a while and pay me hourly. But he was a good friend, and I knew he was doing everything legally during that gray area period during Prop 215. With a collective, he'd tell me most things, and I was super, super intrigued with the entire industry and the business behind so much of this. And it was honestly a free for all. And I remember watching this bubble where it had gotten legalized, but then even after it was legalized, it was like this clearance on the black market where people and farmers and wherever the sources they were coming from, were trying to push off as much weight as they possibly could before they turned to like more legal and started track and tracing and started to get licensed. Yeah, I just remember some crazy times where he would walk in like before Christmas time, like before winter break, and drop off just an unbelievable amount and be like, this was just left over, and things are going for like pounds are going for like $200.
Wow.
And I just
I
remember
remember it was those like large bags that you used to have, right? You used to just be like, this is all our weed.
It was unbelievable. Like it just didn't make sense where he would just drop it off and we'd just have it for whoever came through. And And everything was legal at that time, but it was super gray area. And in California, no one was worried about it like being enforced unless you were like out loud making huge moves, making large amounts of money and got noticed. But I also remember hearing a lot of stories about like some of the back ends being kind of violent and like robberies happening and whatever.
Yeah.
It's super, super, super strict, and that's not going to happen. And it's a real business. So that goes into where, yeah, I can feed into Pale. And it's been interesting for me, everything just to observe the oncoming of this entire industry and see the government and the different like programs try to enforce things that they don't even necessarily know about. And some of it works, some of it really doesn't.
Makes sense. I hope that there's reforms as it goes on, but you kind of got to lay out a plan and then see what happens. So makes sense.
And I would say what's been the most satisfying and fulfilling thing about this whole journey for me is talking right there about how easy it used to be versus how hard it is now. I will honestly take the more difficult side of this 10 times out of 10 because it's taken it from, like I said, something that any dumbass who knows the right people can make money in to a legitimate business where I didn't study weed in college. I'm not gonna say that
You did?
I'm not gonna say that I really used my college degree. Yeah, I studied environmental management and protection, which it was fun, but no. Going from how it used to be to how it is right now, this is such a complex industry that is so difficult to succeed in that it's been I will take it being more difficult because it now feels like something that I was just doing for the time being to something that is absolutely what I'll be making a career out of and what is more of a legitimate profession. And like, I know the ins and outs of it so well now that some of these big business people who just have a ton of money and hopped into cannabis because they're like, oh, it'll be a gold mine,
Yeah.
they have their lawyers calling me to ask me how this shit works because they can read through the regulations and still have no idea what they're supposed to do.
What's actually going to happen when you're on the ground? Like, it's like,
Yeah.
this is what you have to comply, but like, what is I just asked you, what does the day to day look like? Like,
Yeah.
what do I have to do? What is A, what is B? And also like you said, I mean, people call it the weed industry now. Like, what this legalization did was made it an industry, same way as any consulting or whatever. Like, this is now a legitimate career path because of how much regulation went into it. It is now, like you said, like you have to be a business person. You can't just be Joe Schmo chill guy.
Yeah. I don't deal with dumbasses
Our
anymore.
favorite.
I deal with business people, and it's so nice.
And then kind of on the inverse of this, like what is the hardest part for you guys?
The hardest part is surviving as a small business because our prices, I mean, those prices I was telling you that we sell our wholesale, whatever, eighths, ounces, half ounces, we have to keep our pricing competitive with those big companies that can purchase 50 pounds of 5 strains at a time. So when they're testing 50 pounds at a time, that test cost, that's $80 a pound for me when I'm spreading it across 10 pounds. It's like, I don't know, like,
How about that? Yeah.
don't make me do math in my head right now, but it's like
Yeah.
$10 a pound for them amongst all the other ways that they're able to reduce their costs by increasing their scale. We have to compete with all those. We're all selling to the same retailers. The hardest part is being able to compete as a small business with these huge operations that can just produce at scale and reduce their costs so drastically, where we have our costs are higher because we're smaller and we have to be able to sell at the same rate, and we're paying the same overhead because they have higher overhead because they've got a larger staff, but we all had to spend the same money to get the facilities up and running. So
some of these places, I guess, invested in upfront on like machinery that it's automated and can package things at a super high rate, and they only have a few employees and they're pumping out.
But those machines are hundreds of thousands of dollars, and
so it makes we're all packaging a lot, but I'm definitely coming in a lot, trying to break up what we're about to package, trying to be as efficient as possible with what the priorities are, by when do we have to package certain things.
Yeah.
Also in this time, we have to use all gloves. We're supposed to be using masks in different tasks, and there's certain things that we need to be using that are, well, they're just difficult to find right now, and obviously like healthcare workers and people like that need them right now. So there's a lot of aspects where my job is great, and the local business is great, and being able to transport deliveries to different retailers, and especially during this time, being able to fill a lot of orders at once when bigger businesses are seeing a lot of obstacles because a lot of their employees are calling out and saying they don't want to work right now and whatever, where we've got really loyal, I guess, clients and relationships within the community. So that makes it all worth it. And it's been super amazing to, I guess, just watch everything progress, especially during this time where we're considered an essential business. And there's a lot of businesses dealing with a lot of different things.
I would guess the most difficult for Wes is when I tell him that he needs to package up a pound in the next hour and a half, and he's like, "I that's not possible." And I say, "It's
Make it happen.
possible, and you need to do it." And we get contentious sometimes because I do a lot of
business.
I do a lot of packaging, but ultimately I bark orders at him to do the packaging, and I frequently get pissed at him when he can't do it in sometimes an unrealistic time frame.
Pale,
I don't want to get between you guys.
Pale has incredible sales skills, but I'm one tough to manage. I won't say that he has bad management skills, but
should this become like a
it could
couple?
be better. But we also run a business on the side, so we're also doing a lot of these packaging, what makes it really worth it and really beneficial when you should just be mindlessly packaging. Like, we listen to a lot of podcasts, we listen to music all day long.
Like it doesn't happen every night. You guys should tune in.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, we'll talk about that in the future, but we do a lot of we have a lot of conversation about that business on the side as well. So we're working on all ends at all times, but it's two kind of different perspectives on a lot of places of growth and a lot of places of change.
I mean, those are kind of the best dynamics, because like, why have someone that's going to think the same things as you? It's literally wasting your money. Like, it's like you almost want to have you guys who are going to think about things differently, so you're getting all sides of it, versus like, you don't need two Pales or two S's. That's just not even a smart business move, especially for a small business. Where do you guys see yourself in like a year or 5 or like whatever? Like, do you see this growing into a larger business, or do you kind of see it staying at this scale? And also, what advice do you have to people that want to enter this industry?
Okay, so first off, in a year, honestly, hopefully we're just still in business, which we're on track to be, but you never fucking know. But 5 years, I mean, what we're focusing on right now is expanding our product line, offering more than just flower. Like he said, we launched our pre-rolls. So right now we have flower and pre-rolls. We just finished packaging our first batch of shatter. We're partnering with some other cultivators to bring in other flower brands. So expanding our product line is going to allow us to grow the company by interesting other retailers. Because right now I can shoot out a menu to every retailer in the state, and the problem is a lot of them, they're fine on flower, but we might be able to offer them better prices on shatter. Or this guy, shatter is concentrate, dab shit. But this guy, we might have a better price on shatter. This guy, we might have a better price on pre-roll. So expanding our product line allows us to grow. And basically in 5 years, just hope to have a range of well-known brands, things that like Corova or Heavy Hitters, the big distillate one, and just some brands that are really well known around the state that we're the ones that create, package, and distribute those. Ideally, we can be growing with our brands. And anybody that wants to get into this business, oh my God, dude. Do research on who you're gonna work for. Understand what caliber of business they are. Make sure that they have the right values, because a lot of the problem with this is you get business people who don't know anything about cannabis. A lot of even some of these brands that are really well known, like, it's just run by business people who don't know anything about the product, and they don't care about the consumers. They just want to maximize their profits. And so understanding the values of your employer, and if you want to just try and go out and get your own license, make sure you have a lot of money saved up.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Anything to that?
Connections. You gotta have connections.
Yeah.
It seems like a lot of things are who you know still.
Yeah. Makes sense, especially in a new industry. It's kind of more word of mouth. Like you said, those people who call you and are like, what do we have to do? Because you're not going to be able to Google this shit right now it's a lot of it is like, yeah, you just got to know who to call.
I've been carrying the team on my back right now, smoking. So now,
Okay, so
finally getting high.
just to give you a little bit of background on this, yeah, I get high every day or every night, but I don't do anything when I'm high. I get high when I'm at the point of Netflix is on. I don't have to talk to anybody but my roommates, and maybe eat some snacks.
A
I'm still
podcast
talking.
is not on
He
that.
wanted me to be chiefing with him this whole time, and I'm like, bro, if you want me to speak on this podcast,
420.
it's okay. Yeah, it's 420. It's 420, which is why I'm compromising and getting
These
high.
are you guys' differences, what keeps the business going. You need one to smoke and you need one to not smoke and smoke at the end. So, like, it all worked out. This has been a thrilling episode for me. All right, boys, I'm going to ask you your first question. Wait, let me find it. I'm high, so this is harder than usual.
Tell me.
Okay, is a hot dog a sandwich?
No.
Why?
Number one, orientation. Number two, the fact that the hot dog goes like more of a taco. If you ask me if it was a taco, I think there's more of an argument there.
Interesting. Okay, so I want to hear your argument for why taco.
Well, number one, I take my sandwiches incredibly seriously. I worked at Jersey Mike's for 3.5 years in high school. So
Wow.
number one, the decadence of the sandwiches that I create, just the hot dogs don't make it into that category.
It doesn't have the girth. It can't like fucking stack.
Hot dogs are in their own category. Yeah. And I would put sausages in that category with them, like Polish and like whatever. But like that is its own category. Hot dogs are, I've said it before. It's come out of my mouth. Someone has asked me if you were like about to be killed and you got to eat one more food.
Portillo's hot dog?
I have said that. And my mom actually just sent me some Portillo's hot dogs. Shout out, Mom. I love you. And Italian. Yeah, dude. And a chocolate cake. I fed it to all my roommates. They were hype.
Wow, that's amazing. Good to know. I'll text my mom.
Italian beef is literally so delicious even when it's shipped. And if you follow the directions on the hot dogs, they send you all the ingredients fresh for a Chicago dog.
Wow, that's fucking crazy. I'm learning so much. I like literally am gonna come away with this with so much knowledge. All right. Next question. If animals could talk, which one would be the rudest?
Cats.
Cats, just like house cats?
Yeah. I also
They're dicks.
cats.
They're dicks though, which is kind of the best part about them.
I didn't know off the top of my head, and I would totally agree with cats. Cats are such assholes. And they have the fattest egos.
That's it. Like they're really like fucking prideful.
I used to not like them. Yeah, just describes Pale. It surprised me when I first found out he really liked cats and he like had a cat and whatever, which is a whole story. But I have come to learn that cats describe Pale very, very, very well. And I did not like cats, but I have been shown by friends that there are dope ass cats.
There are some really good ones.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I totally agree with that. You just gotta make sure you pick the right type.
There are some shitty ass fucking cats, but there are also some shitty ass dogs.
All right, boys. Last question. This one should be kind of fun or hopefully easy. When you're high, what is your go-to munch? And second part B question is when you're high, what is not your go-to munch, but your favorite munch? When you're like, guys, let's go get X. So like you kind of ball out on the munch. What is that munch?
So like the let's go get it munch is probably boba, because we got this killer boba place.
I did not expect that from you.
Yeah, dude.
Whoa.
We hit the boba way too often. But yeah, we have this exceptional boba establishment right across the street from my house. And
I thought Domino's or Popeyes for you.
oh, dude, I'm usually thinking desserts because I already explained when I get high. I usually get high around 9 p.m. I've already eaten dinner at this point. So it's usually some variety of dessert, in which case it's either going to be boba, or we also live dangerously close to this establishment called Insomnia Cookies that delivers ice cream and cookies until 3 a.m. They don't even have to deliver it to us. We live a 30-second. We're like next door neighbors with Insomnia.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so it's kind of dangerous. But so those are like the get up and grab it munch. And what I think I can put down an ungodly amount of that I usually have on deck is just straight up fruit snacks.
Nice. What's your favorite type of fruit snack? Like what brand?
Hit me with the Welch's all day.
Nice. Okay, cool. The regular blue package.
If tropical's available, then yes, but they don't sell that in the Costco box, whereas
Yeah.
they sell in the Costco box. So
All right, Wes. What about you? Finish this off.
Dude, if you talk to the people that see me the most, I don't totally agree with them at all, but they will say that I have like the worst diet ever. And I'll be like
it's
ordering
up there.
I've been eating super well during quarantine, and like we've been cooking at the house super well. I have like some really good recipes under my belt for sure, but I also have the worst guilty pleasures of like I have McDonald's way too much.
I think it's because we're from the Midwest. Like we just grew up eating pretty shittily. Like it's
like I have a lot of beef, which is bad, and I've been trying to cut down. So I eat a lot of salads, eat a lot of Brussels, eat a lot of like veggies, and I have good people in my life that keep me eating the right way.
the California people.
But I would consider like those late night like really guilty pleasures, like the Uber Eats whatever's open. So like either pizza,
Grossy, greasy.
burgers. I mean,
I love it. I'm the same way.
yeah, if I'm at home, I've lived off of hot dogs for extended periods of time.
You're definitely not supposed to eat hot dogs. And not supposed to eat it to the point where you can say that you live off them. That's something that I know.
No, yeah, that's a long story, but yeah, no, I lived off hot dogs pretty much. Like I had like 5 things that I ate, and hot dogs are so cheap.
That's so funny.
Yeah, during a time where I had no money, but we were starting a business.
You gotta make that an initial investment to get your shit going. Guys, I have to wrap up, but I want to say thank you so much for joining me on this episode. This was so fun. Honestly, a highlight of this week for me, which I feel like it's good to have highlights of a week in a quarantine because the shit's pretty crazy. Thank you guys for tuning in, and whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your preferred podcast, come back next week for an amazing episode with Dylan Daniel Mutyaba, an actor in Hollywood who is making his way. And thanks, Wes and Pale, again for your amazing time. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your weekend and 420 when this launches. I hope you were able to smoke during this if you're listening on the holiday. And even though we couldn't all be together in a month that is also 420, by the way, like 420,
Dude, this is the 420 of all 420.
420. So find a way to celebrate, y'all, because the holiday deserves it. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day or whenever time you're watching this. Bye.
Bye.
Guys, I'm so high. I was like, what do I say? I had no idea.
Oh, dude, did you see how much I smoked?
Yeah, you smoked so much more. Oh my God.